TV. Purpose-driven art.
We're starting back to MLoveizm. You're going to be the first person. And it's been since our last recording. I looked it up. I think it was back in 2009 or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
10 years later, 11 years later.
So I think, we've had several conversations about a lot of different things. And I think it's fitting to bring all this back and then just dive right into it. I don't want to go into, all the MLoveizm stuff, but we have interviewed you. Well, first, I'm your host, artist Daniel Quinones. This is
Chris Crutchfield.
Awesome. And Chris, how about you tell the audience real quick? I have questions I'm going to ask you, but just kind of a synopsis of who you are and what you do.
All right, my name is Chris. I am a really interesting person. I am from North Carolina. Spent a lot of time in Los Angeles where I met the wonderful Quinones family. And I am a content creator and visual and audio storyteller. So I create motion graphics. I am a director, editor, and I also am a music artist and producer as well. Awesome. So I kind of do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I like it. It's cool.
Awesome. Okay, so how long have you been in the industry?
I've been in the industry for about 15 years, since about 2005.
Okay. Awesome.
14 years, I'll say, since 06.
Gotcha. I'm going to turn you up real quick.
I was just about to ask that. Can you hear me all right?
I can now. I turned up my volume.
Okay, cool. Is the quality clear and everything?
Yep, okay, you're cool. Good. You're good. All right, so the first question, you've been in the industry for 15 years, but when you first started, you didn't have the dynamics of being married and having kids and all that stuff. So the first question is, I'm going to read it first, and I'll edit all this so it's smooth.
Got it.
The first question is, what's your responsibility to your wife, your kids, and your community in the creation of your art? So what do you even feel it? Do you feel that there's a responsibility that you hold now that's different now that you are married and have a kid with how you're creating and what you're creating? Do you think there's a responsibility you carry as an artist now in that realm? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think the answer is yes. I do believe that there's a responsibility I carry as an artist in my community and in my family. And that responsibility is just one of, lately I've likened a lot of things to a basketball game. You know me, Daniel, you've seen how tall I am. I used to play basketball.
Yeah.
And when you're on a team playing in a game on the court in front of fans especially, your honor to pretty much everybody in that arena is to score a point in the winning goal, in the goal of the home team, so to speak, to advance toward winning the game. I consider that metaphor of my family and community in relation to your question, like the home team being truth, love, and a point or 2 points toward making that truth available and digestible for the next generation, particularly my daughter's generation, which she's only 9 months old now. So we're talking, the little ones, and the ones that are little now, and then the ones as they grow. And, obviously that content will remain in existence as long as the internet still turns on. And, so there'll be new little children who come to discover that later. And I believe that, we've been given these God-given talents to used somehow for his kingdom and for his glory. And I just believe that my responsibility is to reflect a respectable iteration or expression of that talent with the time I have now in the consensus of what is going on in the world, because I do believe that me being born when I was born is significant. Same with you, and the era that we grew up in, giving us a perspective on today.
Mm-hmm.
And I simply see every basket that I can score in terms of keeping my responsibility with each artistic expression, simply something that should encourage, uplift, make laugh, make smile, and not embarrass the family in the process.
Yeah, that's good. So what were those 3 key points that you just said?
It should be encouraging, uplifting, and it should be full of truth, and something that you that represents the knowledge and the wisdom that I've learned at this age.
Yeah.
That I can leave for my little one and everybody else's little ones today and going forward.
Gotcha. Now, because we talk a lot and I start thinking, I do have questions, but I'm going to feed off of your answers.
Okay.
So we might deviate from the questions, but I think we're just talking. It's just me and you talking on the phone.
Perfect.
Okay.
Now, question, does it look better if I look like this or like this?
It looks better when you're just looking around, thinking and being contemplative of what you're saying and all that stuff. So just natural. Yeah. Okay. With that being said, the uplifting, the truth, the laughing, that held responsibility that you have now as an artist, that kind of, from what I gather, is filtering your art now, that you dispense filters through your family so that it's good food for them, right?
Absolutely.
So in that dynamic, is there anything that you see when you're contributing to those factors that have to deal with, especially with what's going on, that it has to be pivoted in a racial or black and white or Hispanic or Christian or non-Christian context? Because it seems like right now everything's so polarized. And when you explained your responsibility as an artist, for me, what I gathered is I didn't see that there was any, what do you call it? There was no titles to divide that. There wasn't a black version of it, a white version of it, a skinny version of it, a fat version of it, none of that. It was just pure, goodness coming out.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's a weighted responsibility or not with what's going on with just everybody's very emotional and offended with everything kind of perspective? Do you feel that you've assumed any of that responsibility, being, and I'm just going to throw it out there, being that you are the color that you are? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good question. Great question. I personally do not assume a microgram of that weight or responsibility, and I'll explain why. Now, first of all, I'll preface that with, I believe that each of us are given an individual creative spark that has a much bigger cosmic reason that I don't know about, like that none of us really can know until the end of time, and everybody's standing next to the pearly gates and St. Peter's like, okay, this is why I needed you to know this, and
Yeah,
there's that degree of it. But so for the people who do feel compelled to speak or create from a perspective of their race or culture, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But the reason that I choose to, for the most part, not bring that up is twofold. Number one, there are plenty of other artists doing it. It's like, if I'm going to make a small business selling popcorn and there's 17 other kettle corn shops on the block, I'm probably not going to sell kettle corn. So it's like, I don't feel the need to, because I feel like that market is saturated. or that concentration has a lot of energy being siphoned through it, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But the second reason, which I believe is probably the actual reason, is because I feel that I am constantly learning and relearning about history and how it has been misrepresented to us across the board. Black is the color of this bottle. Now, technically, this bottle's not even black. It's purple. Can you see the light, the sunlight through it?
I sure can, yeah.
This bottle's made of amethyst. So, great case in point. It's not even black. It's purple. It just looks black, right? This microphone, this is black, right?
Yeah.
This is brown. And it came from a bloodline that referred to itself as a completely different name and title just 100 years ago. And 100 years or 500 years prior to that, a completely different name and title. And the cycle continues as we go back. So my focus has really been on trying to not use the terms and labels and categories and classifications that have been so supercharged with polarization energy to overlay over my art and try to create something outside of that title. Because A, we're dealing with all kinds of races and all kinds of places thanks to the internet. There are people overseas and in many different cultures that experience my art. And for me to make it as universal as possible, or just as universal as I've wanted it to be, maybe it's not as possible. I've just chosen to not focus on titles that have been recently created for people of all of all shades too, right? Brown people from Texas that have heritage from Latin and South America who, you know, would be considered white to a black person in Alabama, but black to a white person in Seattle. You know, it's like, what? Nothing's black or white. It's all like this shade of something in the in-between. And when you get out of those titles and you jump back into cultures like my wife who's Swedish, or, you know, my friends who are Latino, or, you know, research that connects ancient Hebrew cultures to, you know, what people consider modern day black cultures. I begin to find those titles and those identifiers more pertinent and more healthy for future conversation, because as you pointed out, everything is polarized nowadays. Everything. So I just really, you know, I become acutely aware of the things that do carry a lot of, you know, bite to their sting, and I try to kind of circumnavigate those. I'll use them, you know, artistically when I want to create that sting, when I want to amplify that polarization. But for the most part, everybody amplifies the polarization, so I don't feel like I need to do that. And I really try to focus on art that just speaks to everyone, because when you look back at, I mean, the great names throughout history, like even the great inventors, right? The guy who, I've heard it said, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard it said that the gentleman who invented the flushable toilet was a black guy, right? Maybe that is true, maybe it's not, right? But white people like sitting on a flushable toilet, black people like sitting on a flushable toilet, brown people like sitting. So we all like toilets that flush, right?
Yeah.
So the outworking of a creative expression, because as we know, inventions are creation, artistic pieces are creation, songs and music are creation. All of these are inventions of a creative mind. They end up creating a ripple effect through time and space, a butterfly effect, if you will, that can be as big as the universe, potentially. And when you pre-limit that to, well, this is for the black folks, or this is for, you know, a relatively non-black, you know, when you pre-can them and pre-sandbox them, you chop the butterfly's wings off, so to speak. You clip the wings of the potential, I feel, of what it could be, and then you leave room for the narrative to be reappropriated by the people who are looking for any possible new piece of drama to fuel and stoke the fires. So I just try to give them no logs to burn. You know, I create my own fire, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, and I try to just stick with things that are full of love and joy and truth. And I believe that truth transcends these labels. And so I just try not to, I don't get offended personally when they're applied. I just don't feed into it as much as I can help.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, the love, joy, truth, the community that your assumed responsibility now as a creator is to the masses,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't fit a narrative based on your skin tone, do you then I guess marginalized or objectified by your own quote unquote audience because you're not assuming the popular uh the popular
Yeah,
direction of the time? Do
yeah,
you get, for lack of better words, do you get stoned because of that? You know what I mean?
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Fortunately, not as often as probably some others. So it has happened. It does not happen as regularly as it could and probably does for others. So I've taken that just as a sign of spiritual protection and kind of a calling, if you will, or like an affirmation of my calling, maybe, if you will. And I think that it might be different in the future, but I think as of now, up to this point, I've been able to cast a wide enough, universally acceptable enough net
Yeah.
that all kinds of fish in the net appreciate being inside my net of creativity.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, it hasn't been a tremendous amount of issues in that regard. I have this whole theory that offense is a two-way transaction, right? If I show up on this Zoom call and I'm from the planet Neptune and I've never heard of political correctness in America in the year 2020, and my aim is not to offend you whatsoever, but I go, hey, little man, what is that funny little thing on your head? Why is yours light brown? This is the color of things that are supposed to be on your head. What's that on yours? That's silly. You must be a funny hat person. You know, I can come up with a zillion names, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to offend you, but on your end, if you decide, oh, what the F, bro? Like I like this color. What's it to you? You know, you can choose offense if you like. If the equation was flipped, if I was definitely trying to offend you, like, oh, man, you don't know nothing, you old funny hat wearing person, you could choose to go, all right, sure, I'm fine. You know, you can choose to completely just sidestep the, you know, offense dart, so to speak. And it's happened all the time. People are called the N-word in, you know, rural South Carolina, and you just chuckle and keep laughing at them. Yeah. Or people have said, hey, can you come near so I can hear? And you're like, excuse me, what you say? You know, you've hopped toward the issue like a bulldog. And so when it comes to the art of it all, it's like, unless you're fishing for validation within your own ecosystem of identity and you're trying to make that the point of your art, they better get it, then you almost kind of like have to like want to be offended in order for that to happen. Like it happens.
Yeah. It's great that you brought that up, because I'm going to go that direction with the identity thing, because you were very clear in the beginning of what your responsibility was. To me, I feel that you're firm in that. There's no swaying in your understanding of who Chris is to portray that to the masses through the filter of your family, right? Mm-hmm. So do you feel from an artist's perspective that not having that rooted stance of identity of who Chris is can then sway the creation of your art to where it just goes in every direction?
Absolutely, because art is almost always better when there's an emotional investment from the artist. in the art that they're making. As an artist, you know, some artists like, hey man, here's a dope paycheck, do this, and you're like, thanks for the check, whatever. Okay, here you go, right? It's like 0% emotional investment involved in the actual creation. It's just like, okay, the deadline's here. Okay, did you transfer the dollar yet? Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
And then there's other things that is the exact opposite of that, where it's like, I'm losing money on the deal, and I'm spending hours and hours and losing sleep, but I'm doing it anyway because of a passion about it.
Yeah.
I believe that the best artists always got that emotional fuel that's driven more than a financial fuel or any sort of other fuel. And if that emotional fuel is tainted or mixed with the ethanol of confusion or desperation or desire to take on an identity that's still being fleshed out or figured out, I believe it just creates opportunities to be misunderstood. I mean, again, simple analogy would be a art gallery showing, right? I do a painting. Here's my painting, right? What do you think that this looks like to you? Now, internally, I drew this as the separation of the dark night of the soul in a black person compared to the yellow people and the pink people all over the earth, and how they're outside of the box that I drew to represent my safe space, right? That's my personal, emotionally charged inspiration behind my abstract painting. But it's hanging in this gallery, and someone goes and sees it, and they interpret it as, oh, I see, you like to choose to create space between the colors instead of mixing them all together. And you prefer the divide, or you prefer saying, you know, when your skin is the same color as mine, then this section of the painting's for you. And for everybody who it isn't, I'm representing y'all over here. And so then it becomes an opportunity for someone to read into your art what you didn't intend for it. Mm-hmm. And then things like love and patience and joy and all the fruits of the spirit, love, joy, peace, gentleness, patience, self-control, all these types of things are beginning to be compromised with what probably was a great intention, but it's just wrapped in the darts of the day, if you will. Today is we're in 2020, for anybody watching this in the future. If you probably remember what 2020 was like, it was wild. I'm not saying 2021 is going to be less wild, but I'm saying 2020 was definitely wild. And the summer of 2020 had a lot of racially motivated attention paid to it. And so I just try to really, you know, craft like a piece of Play-Doh, the attention in my art. Like, where do I really want people to focus? Let's focus on anything that that isn't being focused on by the mainstream pop culture today. And in most cases, that makes one's art stand out. I'm not the only person who's figured that out. Plenty of other magnificent artists from all mediums do the same thing. But maybe they are avert in their attempt to do that. Maybe they don't realize they're doing it. They're just being themselves and being true to themselves as artists. But I just know that when you give your spiritual / cosmic enemy more weapons and arrows to put in his quiver that he can fire back at you, he'll fire them back. So if you reduce the amount of arrows in the quiver by knowing, you know, at least within a general space or scope, how things can and most likely will be perceived, you know, navigating around that to get your art to speak is what I feel like is the most wise way to create. Gotcha.
Now, with all that racially charged stuff going on right now in 2020, you know, we can't negate the fact too that you do have a firm understanding of your identity, and a lot of people don't, right? And you could say that those people that don't are easily swayed emotionally with anger and confusion and depression, and I mean, just, you know, it's almost like with the whole COVID, that the carpet was laid, and anxiety and worry and all this stuff. And do I wipe my bags down with Clorox bleach and all this stuff? All of these emotions to me were, they were laid upon us to kind of destabilize the identity, right? So with
or at least to get you to put it at a level that it doesn't need to be at.
Yeah.
Like, for clarification, I'm not suggesting that people's personal identity isn't important. I'm just saying that the focus on the validation in the other person accepting your view of your own personal identity has been elevated above that person's, you know, respect for your own communication back. You know, just all these other more important first steps are being stepped on and like bullied so that you can know about me what I think about me and you can agree because I think that way and who are you to tell me otherwise? You know, it's like it's the wrong foot forward with a lot of that. And I think that it shows. I mean, just look at the way, you know, the Karen culture has kind of swept over storm. Like, it's been memeified. And there are Karens in this world. We get it. But they're not that common, right? They didn't just show up in the summer of 2020. They've been here the whole time. But by focusing on them so much, Karen becomes every white person. and let's say George Floyd becomes every black person from the flip side of the perspective. Someone who should have just been obedient to authority and weren't, and now look what happened, you know? It's like two of the worst, I mean, again, in both situations, there's two of the worst case scenario of those socioeconomic subcultures. The Karen from the original, I want to call the cops on you, from the lady from the park. That I know plenty of white people who aren't like that. George Floyd, you know, someone who was killed and you know, murdered in a way that no human should ever deserve to have to be killed, but who also is kind of like not that virtuous of a person either, is being elevated to such a noise level, a tension level that, you know, it's all just being, I call it all an energy theft session. They're just snatching your energy, creative, any kind of energy, kinetic, vocal energy, you know, you tire, your thumb energy, all kinds of energy is being siphoned into these psychological operations, if you will, that just simply return a void, or in many cases, a negative creative expression. They're destructive. I mean, that's what a negative creative expression is. If you're painting on a canvas and you don't like it and you take a knife to the canvas, since you just essentially you just undid the creative process. And I think that that's what's happening. I think that the reason it's happening is because the collective joining of all races, keeping in mind there's really only one race, the human race, but of all nationalities that have been reappropriated into the word races, the collective harmony, synthesis, like palette, color palette, you know, homogeny, if you will, would actually work very much against the plans of enslavement and death. And unfortunately, the leadership of pop culture seems to really like the idea of enslavement and death. And so they just promote it a lot. And
so let me, that's interesting you said. So all the emotions from the COVID stuff kind of gooing onto everybody, and then we usher in this other traumatic thing that happens. Offense becomes mixed in with the fear, the depression, the anger, the cooped upness, and the frustration, all that kind of stuff. What I'm gathering that you're saying is that all these different emotions ultimately destroy the creative process.
Right. Yeah. And the creative process, I feel like what the type of art that you do is the absolute best poster, no pun intended, for the premise of the creative process. Sitting down with a blank canvas or piece of paper, spending 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes without even picking your pen up and creating a new visualization that didn't even exist in the world 10 minutes before. It's the perfect allegory for creativity in general. But everything is pretty much creative. Think about like inventions or business solutions or like machine parts or educational systems or songs, music. Any of these things are new stuff that exists that didn't exist yesterday, that solves a problem, that helps someone, or at least provides a drawbridge that someone can use to walk over to get from point A to point B, whether that's within their own identity or within the rent check that they needed to pay because it was due, so they just did the art anyway. It's like, those are two extremes of one spectrum, but everything in between.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just feel that the overall tone is reappropriated when it's couched inside the context of pop culture and what it's promoting presently. A lot of, there's a lot of merit to the idea that art imitates life.
Yeah.
I've always said life imitates art, imitates life. Right? So television and mass media has made it possible in basically 50 or less years for someone sitting in a tent in Uganda, Africa, to see something that I push on a button on my desk here in America in under 10 seconds. Like, that's never been possible in the history of humanity, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And that should indicate that the net is a lot bigger than this microcosm of American politics and American social justice issues and American tension, because American, I don't hate America. I just recognize that the fruits of what we say we stand for, like what we say we stand for as a nation, and the fruits of that idea do not line up.
Yeah.
At all. And so I just try to step outside and transcend even the idea of the American and just really go as a human involved in the human condition with 7.7 billion plus, or who knows how many other humans. What can we all do to work together so that maybe one day we can get to a point where we can all figure out that I don't hate you and you don't hate me. And I was told by that guy over there that y'all wrap a towel around your head and want to kill me. But when I met you, you didn't want to do that. And you probably were told by the guy on your TV that I just wanted freedom and I wanted to come and kill you. But I'm already free. I don't feel like I have to kill you for that. So let's just eat some bread and maybe dip it in some spices and crack open an Xbox. You know what I'm saying? People, the more I've traveled to all over the world, I've just realized that people pretty much want the same stuff all around. They just want food for their family. They want to feel like they can go to sleep at night and not have to look over their shoulder. They want to know that when they turn the faucet, water gonna come out. And that's basically it. It's like a really short list of things. And so when you realize that, hey, we all want the same thing, it's only them who want us all to be fighting against one another. Yeah. Then you go, oh, okay, hold on, let's not fight. Listen, wait. These are the ones. Let's work together and figure out what they are trying to get us not to know. Yeah. And that just becomes a creative launching point, because now you're not encumbered by the predefined, oh, well, if you're Black, this is the type of music you're supposed to make. Oh, well, you're not Black. You can't say stuff like that. Or any of those, statements that I'm sure you've heard through the grapevine when it comes to artists and creation.
Yeah, I have so many things to say from that. One, I do remember when me and Melissa were in Portugal, when you watch news outside of the US, they do a good job of painting the US like it's a nut house. Like it's absolutely crazy. And I remember the cab driver was taking us and we started talking about Trump and all this kind of stuff, and I'm let's not even open that conversation, but the guy from Portugal, born and raised, made a beautiful comment. He said that the people of America are too great of a people to let one man divide that country. And that was coming from a guy not from the US.
Right.
And it blew my mind because the stuff that me and Melissa were watching about our America in Portugal were like this place is burning down and everybody in America is going to hell or something, you know? So yeah, it's such a polarization as far as when you do say, what are they doing? Because there's definitely, to me, it's such a, like, depending on what you turn on, you're going to get a different pill to swallow. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You got, they got, it's like a Pez dispenser on your TV stand.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
pill am I going to turn on today? Let's go to the red pill channel.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Oh, this was happening?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then you get emotionally charged and you're completely so emotional that it disrupts the creative process, which leads me to the next question. Do you believe that the purity of the creative process has been perverted by all these emotions to just destroy the beauty of creativity? And that's not based on one race. I mean, there's so much beauty in all these countries. You know, you mentioned you traveled. I mean, you can go to the train, the boat, you can go fly, and there's beauty everywhere. It's different. So with this moment in time, do you feel that the purity of creativity has been perverted? And with that being said, do you feel that there's a responsibility to fight for that purity to be put back into the creative world? You know what I mean?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I do believe that the creative purity has been under attack, and for a long time, probably since before I was born, but like at least within the last 10 years of my 35-year-old life.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's not by accident. I do believe that's on purpose. And I believe also that there's plenty of evidence to support that belief that I hold. But furthermore, I believe that the creative process is the closest testament we have, witness, if you will, to the fact that we are made in the image of the Creator. And that's like saying, it's like saying I'm a good basketball player because my dad was an NBA all-time athlete. I'm made in the literal DNA recreation of my forefather, who happened to excel in one expression, and I therefore excel in that same expression. Creativity is what humankind as a human race has, that most reflects the Father's presence in his hand in our direct life. Without going off too far into space, I remember I read a lot, and I've read some very interesting documents, and one of which was about an alleged secret division of the government. Now, again, I can't confirm or deny that this is true. This is just what I read, but I'll get to why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah.
In this off-books division of the NSA, we all have heard of the NSA thanks to Edward Snowden, but this is a special subdivision of the NSA that, according to this person who wrote this, claims to be working with non-human partners. And one thing he said in that piece that really struck me as like kind of crazy but very interesting is he said, you know, there are things that we would consider advanced about their species that they could do, like learn your language in under 2 weeks, or express their thoughts and emotions just through their skin changes and not through words or auditory signals. He said, but there are things that we do that they can't do, chief of which is creative problem solving. He said with the division of people, right, that they worked with, if you give them a predefined, like multiple choice set of answers to a creative or logic problem, like a simple SAT level logic problem,
Yeah.
as long as the correct answer was one of the options, they could work through each one and figure out the option. But they rely on humans for the fact that the second you present them with a problem that does not have a predefined answer, which is essentially the basis of creation, a canvas that's blank. I want a picture on here. This is a problem. I have an undefined problem.
Yeah.
Boom. A creation happens, and that creation is the human condition in a nutshell. I should say the human life force in a nutshell, creating. Obviously that parallels when it comes to childbirth, and that parallels when it comes to entrepreneurship and all kinds of different lanes of that same expression. But the article is basically pointing out that these things don't have creativity. Now, I've always held the view that when it comes to dark forces in the spirit world, you're not talking so much about aliens, but you're talking more about demons and fallen angels.
Yeah.
And I feel like spiritually that speaks to a difference in humankind being cut from the fabric of the Father in heaven, more acutely fresh or more closer to the source, or however you word it, having that creative spark to the degree that these advanced beings need our help, according to this article, to get anything done. And so I just remember reading that and being like, interesting. That, like, we solve problems that are not predefined all day, every day. That's called like lunch. You know, it's called like putting your daughter to sleep. Be having two girls and figuring out what with Melissa out the house, like how you gonna get this email sent, get them to bed, keep your sanity, not pee on yourself, make sure they don't pee on themselves. You know, this is all creative problem solving.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, you go off and you create in a different expression. So what it just is shaping up to be, or seem like, is that the human experience is creation, is creativity. Like hyper center, like a Iron Man ball inside of our chest or something like that, literally driving our life force. And to whatever degree we can keep our bodies healthy and our minds and spirits healthy is the degree that we can actually create something useful. The second it becomes compromised, or we get under a state of, influence or mind control to the point where we're redirecting our creative energy, then it just becomes, available for appropriation. And I think it happens with everybody, good artists, bad artists, people who are aware of this stuff still fall prey to some of this stuff. But I think that the awareness is how you see the opponent on the other side of the court and you sidestep them, as opposed to just like running into them like a non-creative entity that may or may not exist in a secret division of the NSA that may or may not exist, according to what one guy said.
So with all that said, how do we fight for the purity of creativity to get that back? I mean, there's so many industries that have completely robbed the creative and have perverted that in all industries. And we've worked for all those industries. We've seen it, we've known it, we've met the people. It gets squirrely.
It gets Colorado bubonic plague squirrely.
Yeah. So knowing that we have a firm stance of our identity and our responsibility to the people around us, both as fathers and then through creative process, then, and me, I'm like, okay, well, what do we do about it? We can't just.
That's the Daniel tagline. All right, I hear you, but what do we do? Solutions. I like it.
So being that you, Chris Crutchfield, as a Black man, me as a Puerto Rican, are talking about a common denominator of what we feel is going on, then what do we do about it? Because we do have a belief system that is also rooted in our belief in Jesus and heaven, and how we move according to that belief, because it's a relationship that we have. then we assume, to me, responsibility as that family, because we've been mandated to go do something about it, not just talk about it. So now that we've talked about, and I've totally left like 9 questions out because we're already at 44 minutes.
Oh man.
Yeah, but
why am I so long-winded? I don't
No,
know. I
no.
don't know.
No, but it's good because your answers had me write different questions to keep on going, so we can get talking. But yeah, if you can answer, what would you do to combat all this craziness? I mean, because we're not just talking about creating art to me anymore. It's like, how do you create now artwork to combat the depression, the anxiety, the inequality on all levels, not pigeoned on any type of creed here. I'm talking about across the board. What are you going to do about that? You know what I'm saying? If you even feel that you should be doing something.
I do. A great question. And it's a very simple answer. Truth. This whole idea of truth has become a relative word. Truth is like, there's an element of a true experience that happened to me that's unique to me, right? But I feel like a true experience is not equivalent to empirical truth. The empirical idea of a thing being like a true thing or not is taking a backseat to the idea of my truth. It's my truth that this is a clear bottle. So it doesn't matter what science says, it doesn't matter what physics says, it doesn't matter what you think. I want to call it true. It's my truth. Like, that's this invention that came out of nowhere a few years ago. And I think that to answer the call of how to reorient and get back to a creative expression, that an artistic expression that actually does address the common denominator issues across Puerto Ricans, Black folks, yellow folks, white folks, purple folks, clear folks, albino folks, people whose actually skin is this color, you know, everybody in between, is to really combat it with the truth. And I find that the second you can take research, like I do a tremendous amount of research, Jenna. You and I know that we've talked prior to this Zoom conference about many things that may or may not be considered popular to discuss.
We'll get there one day.
We'll get there one day. But I find that taking these newly discovered old realities, because all the things that we're discovering are actually like existed before the deception started to make us not become aware of their existence. So they're actually nothing new. It's just a new discovery of an old thing. Speaks, when it's placed in art, it resonates. I've heard this concept of genetic memory. Now, there's a lot of, you know, pseudoscience and like he say, she say within the scientific community as to how prevalent genetic memory actually is. It's the basic premise to monarch butterfly, the nickname that becomes monarch training, because they've taken this idea that you can affect the offspring of a monarch butterfly by genetically altering and conditioning the parent. You can actually express similar expressions of that genetic modification to the offspring of such. So again, without getting too far into the ones and zeros of how that all works, I believe that truth resonates. When you people, oh yeah, that resonates with me. I feel that vibe. I'm vibing with that, right? Vibe being a shorthand for vibrating. Vibratory things being in the realm of resonant things. That resonates with my spirit, with my soul. That doesn't resonate with me, right? That could be because of conditioning. It could also be because it's completely no truth in that art. So it could be either way. But I think that when you say something that's so true and so pure and so unencumbered by predefinable assumptions, where people just have to look at it for what it is and like take it for what it is and hopefully go, wow, I've never seen anything like that. Whether that's music or painting or an invention or some sort of like technical solution, then I think that that's truth. That is what truth looks like, and it resonates. It really does. The history of your ancestry bears witness to that at the subatomic, cellular, molecular level in your body, and then your stomach goes bzzz, like resonates in such a way where when you see it, you're like, yeah. You can't even put words to it half the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, like, share, whatever, because it is truth agreeing with matter, with just like whatever that's in there that burns when something is happy or sad. I don't know, whatever that thing is called.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, I do believe that that's the way you have to combat it. Is that you figure out what is true, what truth looks like based on what you're learning about empirical truth, and you step outside of, well, my experience overrides your experience, and you couch it more like my experience is one expression to a much bigger picture. Take a look at this, and maybe this can help us all figure out how to have a better experience.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been able to figure that out through my career, and that's really what my focus has been lately with my art.
Yeah. So the truth, I mean, and I'm just gonna, play the other side. Right now, truth is so subjective.
It's become subjective. Well, put it like this. People's opinion of what's true has become subjective. So therefore, the word truth is subjective.
So
it's either a deadly virus out there or it's not, right? Yeah. One of the two is a real thing. So what you think of what's out there is kind of what's taking the front seat. It's definitely making the most noise.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have anything. Like if your name is Daniel and you had a great mother and you're like, my name is Daniel and my mother was one of the most awesome mothers ever. And I go, bull. Your mom, you ain't had no mom. You probably was an orphan. I don't know. You don't look like somebody had a good mom. Like, what kind of good mom would teach their son to cut their facial hair like that? I don't believe that.
Yeah.
My belief about your mother has nothing to do with whether or not she was a good mom. Like nothing. Yeah. I cannot believe it all day. It's a conspiracy. Good mom. What you talking about? I didn't have a good mom. None of my friends had good moms. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even think that's possible. I think that's just TV, right? My belief, that's what's really happening. Truth is being overridden by belief of truth and not empirical, objectifiable truth. So it's become subjective. So to your point, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But it's just under assault, I think.
Yeah. And why I brought that up is because, earlier you said that we're the human race. So what I want to do is somewhat give a call to action. Okay, what do we do? What can you tell the human race as far as us being in this all together of what we can do together? So unilaterally, everything starts to happen because, action provokes action. So you create a beautiful song, which I've heard, you've done it for me. They're beautiful. And I sit there and let my girls listen to it. It's a ripple effect that happens to them and they emotionally feel it and see it. And I'm like, well, we need to do that, but on a bigger scale. But then now, as we're talking, and this is why I wanted to do this so much, because I don't want the conversations to just stay between me and you anymore. I want people now to watch this and hopefully get in their head, yeah, we do need to do something as a human race and what that looks like for me, because the objective truth, I mean, what is that connected to? Right. What is it connected to this religion, that religion? Is it connected to this race or that race and all that kind of stuff? So when you can give someone, a visual artist or someone, a tangible, simple line of instruction of what to do to start portraying truth in the creative zone, how could they do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say for the most lofty of goals, take the most simple of approaches, and almost like vice versa for the most simple of goals. Like, start big, go small, start small, go big. And the reason I think that is because there's 7.7 billion people on this earth, all of whom are made in the overwhelming majority of whom are made in the image of God and are capable of creating. Now,
Yeah.
all 7.65 billion of those people have a unique experience that's specific to them, their life, their culture, their upbringing, their ups, their downs, their loves, their struggles. And I think that catharsis has been the vehicle of the day for a very long time. I make art that's cathartic for me, and hopefully you find catharsis in it. Catharsis is great, but catharsis isn't a solution. You were asking earlier. Okay, so great. What do we do about it? How many songs have you heard about, oh, I loved you and you broke my heart, and now I'm gonna be a better person with somebody new. Oh, girl, I mean, how many times has a sad story been put over happy chords in a cathartic manner that has a place, right? There is a place for catharsis.
Yeah.
But that is not a solution. That is the first thing we do until we dry our eyes and begin to look for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it starts with the recognition. I think of it at first, like just understanding that, you know, we do and we create. And, you know, your question was, what does objective truth practically look like? Like, what does that actually mean in terms of like real hard words and not just like floaty words that have wings that just never settle?
So people know, like, hey, I know what to create now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they could be lost in emotional despair right now. We just talked about all that, and
yeah, that's a good. You know, for
like,
me,
go ahead.
For me, I think what I've been feeling that the Holy Spirit's been putting on me in terms of how to address. Put it like this: I'll say what I have been learning interpersonally, and maybe that applies to everybody, presumably, but maybe not. He's been really having me say, how honest are you willing to be about your own experience and your own conditions, your own feelings, your own vulnerabilities within your art? Because the art is the vehicle, right? If Kanye West and Katy Perry make a song called E.T. in 2014, and it has a dope beat and a great melody, and it's really talking about interbreeding with aliens, the theme of the song, that people forget that. They remember you're from a whole other world, a different dimension. You open my, right? You remember the melody, but the content of what the melody is capturing almost like goes in people, and they don't really even know the words to the song. I sang that song, and then like years later, I was like, wait, time out. What was Katy Perry talking about? Like, why? No. I want to be a victim ready for abduction. You're from a whole other world, a different dimension. Now I'm ready to go. Take me into the light. Take me, infect me with your poison. Like, no, don't infect me with no poison. Like, I don't want that, right? But the vehicle for the narrative was the art, the beat, the song.
Yeah.
And so I find that we just take that premise and reinvert it. Like it's a true to Katie and Kanye, I guess, but you like flip that. Okay.
It's like you unpervert it.
Unperverted, exactly.
Yeah.
Build a theme that actually means something. Like, and that theme for one project might be catharsis. It might be, I'm sad and this is the truth. I mean, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. Are you though? Like, it's okay if you're not, and like maybe don't make every piece of art you do about being sad, but like don't be afraid to actually admit it when you are.
Yeah.
And so it's the honesty, and again, that's maybe I'm contradicting myself when I go, everybody's truth isn't relative, truth is empirical, because in that context, being honest with your own self through your art is your truth in a way.
Yeah.
So. You know, I don't have it all figured out by any means, but I just know that in my experience, God has been showing me that for as willing as I am to be as vulnerable as I can be within a context of, you know, decency and respectability, that is how far other people will be able to grasp what I'm, you know, be able to pick up what I'm putting down, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that if it starts there, like, okay, I'm going to draw, and instead of just drawing something pretty, I'm going to draw something that actually I'm dealing with. or I'm going to paint, or I'm going to make a movie. And instead of just making a movie that I know that sells, I'm going to make a movie about something that actually I'm passionate about, that actually hurts me, and that goes through all the emotions, good and bad, that I deal with, so that I can get it out on canvas, on film, on a Vimeo page or whatever somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Same with music, songwriting. And then for however honest I'm willing to be and open and vulnerable in a sense, I do believe that that's just how much larger the potential is for that to help someone in the future. You know what I mean? Because I remember somebody saying, once you create content and it's out, it's there. It's on the internet. It's in a dimension called the internet forever. And who knows what the future will be like. Maybe everybody will be stuck in a computer somewhere, like the Google chief technology wants to happen, or Elon Musk wants to happen. And everything you ever put on the internet will be available for everybody to see at all times, forever and ever, amen, into perpetuity. Who knows, right? So being as honest with your own experiences and with your own message and what it is you're saying, and making sure that that message overlaps something that has some substance to it, that evokes at least one of the fruits of the spirit: love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness. Don't quote me on this. Self-control. You don't have to hit all 7 or whatever, but at least one, right? Maybe happiness can be mixed in there with a little asterisk, and like laughter and things like that. But if your art is to simply like divide and, I won't say to simply divide, but to simply make a statement that inadvertently or not plays into the divide, then it's like, well, now you're just helping them. That's what they want to do.
Yeah. So it's like to create something of truth based on personal experience that really points to what you said in the beginning was your responsibility now as an artist.
Yes.
Filtering through your child and your wife now is
absolutely.
Love, community, laughter, joy, truth.
Right.
So for that objective truth then to have strings attached to those very things, go create that. That's going to bring unity. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And people will see it. Their inner buzzer will, like their taboo buzzer will like bzz whenever it comes out, because it just will. I can't, like, there's a part of the artistic explanation that you just run off of a word cliff, where you don't have any more words to really make the point, but like the clouds are taking you to the next destination because it just connects, right? It's like the universal language, all these things we apply to the art form of music and the art form of visual imagery that you just can't qualify with words, really. So yes, I believe that that's exactly what would happen. I think if everybody, if fame, success, money, all the things that the dark side of the kingdom offers as the, calling cards to come into Hollywood or, anything like that, if all of those things took a backseat to okay, what's going on here? What have I been learning? And what can I do with this ink and pen, with this brush and canvas, with this bass line and melody? What can I do? Let's make a song for children about sharing. Cool. That's cool. Let's have a 4-year-old write the lyrics. Great. I've never done that before. Like, all right, cool. Let's maybe put this word over here and put that word over there. But otherwise, it's great.
Yeah.
And that just becomes true in and of itself. I don't know. It's like I feel like there's some sort of like, piercing through when innocence is couched around like, an 808. It just like, this is why, because everything else that's couched around an 808 is not innocent. It's like debaucherous and like kind of degrading. It's like innocence is probably the last adjective you would ever put to the sentiment of 808 based music, trap music, right? You're in a trap house. It's not even an innocent place to be to begin with. So I think that when you just fuse these but it's like harmless but simple concepts with popular concepts. Then you create this nice little thing you can present that hopefully has some artistic integrity to it, but that just lasts, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we're past our hour mark, and I want to wrap it up with this. The people watching, definitely just go create something that brings the truth, the joy, the community, the laughter, exactly what Chris said in the beginning of this whole thing. We encourage y'all to just go create that. Put all everything else that you've been bombarded with to the side for a second, and then just sit at your canvas or your instrument or whatever, and think of the topics of joy, love, community, and tied into a personal experience that you have, and let's create things that will unite that human race that you talked about.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm your host, artist Daniel Quinones. This is MLoveizmTV. You can check us on YouTube, MLoveizmTV, and the website and all that. And then Chris, what I want you to do is just drop all your info and all that so people can get in contact with you. He makes amazing music. I mean, if you want anything made musically, this is the guy to go to. So go ahead and fill him in with your information.
My name is Chris Crutchfield. All of my social media handles are at Chris Crutch. All one word, no spaces.
Yeah. I'll put a little lower third on the bottom.
There we go. Down here, and links in the bio, down on the right there.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, if y'all like this, you know, do share it, like it, do all that stuff that everybody says on YouTube. But if you don't, it's all good. If anything, this was just for y'all to encourage y'all. And thanks, Chris, so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. I do want to open the door of the crazy talk, the lizard people and the Antarctica and all that stuff. So
now we're getting into the good stuff. Rabbit hole diving.
Yeah. So we'll get into that.
Purpose-driven art.